Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle, back again to do another reel repair and tune-up. In this case, I have a Quantum. It's a circa 1990s early edition bait caster. It's the 1420L graphite. It's a wide chassis. It's typical of the reels we saw at the time from Daiwa and Shimano. And you know, Quantum is right in there. Quantum is a division of Zebco, and it's a reel that has stood the test of time. This is the Dynamag, and it has an adjuster here for the tension setting on the casting for the magnetic brake control. And we're going to start this one by taking off the side plate. Actually, I should start with taking off the handle, just because it's easier for me to work this way when it's on the reel. Generally, you can tell the age of a reel by the case design and the materials. These reels, for some reason, have become fashion statements. So it's, you know, has it been from a square or a rectangular kind of a construction to a more of an oval construction? Is it using the graphite? Is it using how many ball bearings are in it? Those kinds of things have been quote-unquote improvements over time. But overall, you'll see a whole series of these type of reels from the 90s and early 2000s that look very similar to that, and you actually have to read it to say, gee, am I working on a Daiwa or am I working on a Shimano or what have you. Okay, this is another one of these that has the E-clip that holds the handle on. You can't get that handle off without it. So I generally like to hold the one side with a fingernail, just grab a pin or a screwdriver with the other, and generally you can work it off that way. Just protect yourself. It's going to spring if you're not kind of careful in holding it. And after doing a few of these, you can see how I'm just stuck to my finger here. After doing a few of these, I've kind of developed a technique to do that. Just a warning in advance that if you're just going to sit there and poke it away, it may just fly. Okay, the handle comes off. There's a little tension washer under it, which is typical. And then we have our drag assembly. And this is turning, so if you're going to turn and you can't loosen it, put the handle back on and work it that way. Now this is a left-handed reel, so you're kind of turning opposite you would for a right-handed reel. But just be careful and take your time. There's no rush with these things. And I haven't been in one of these in a long time. This one just came in with a batch of other reels, so I'm kind of just kind of freestyling here, thinking I'm knowing what's going on underneath. But I would recommend that you take pictures along the way. If you just picked one of these up and you haven't worked on one, taking pictures along the way will help you to see where the pieces and parts came from if you got stuck. And I'm not quite sure there's a schematic out there. There probably is. That's one place where you can go for a reference. But if you didn't have that schematic, those pictures are going to help you an awful lot. So this is the back side of it. The spool nestles in here. There's a ball bearing sitting in here. The spool assembly on this side. So let's take that spool assembly out, and that's your brake mechanism with a ball bearing there. All we need to do in this case for a service is to make sure that that ball bearing has got the oil it needs, and I like to flood it, particularly if I haven't seen it in a while. Check the spool and make sure that there's no dirt. In this case, there's a little bit of dirt on the back of that, so let's clean that off with a paper towel. Come over to the other side and clean that off as well. And just set that aside, and as you'll notice, I'm using a parts tray to keep track of all my pieces and parts. It's the business end now. Not much going on here, so let's just take the two screws off. Now sometimes there's springs hiding under those screws, and sometimes there aren't. It all depends on the type of free spool mechanism that they have. So just be careful as you take those screws off. I'm just going to lay them right on my table as I take them off at the moment, and then we'll put them into that parts tray. I just want to make sure that they're the same size. They should be. But every now and then you find that there's one that's longer than the other for some reason. Okay, there you are. So I'm going to put those right back into my tray. And then once I do that, I like to sit this down on the table for the bait casters and just slowly bring that plate up and off. screws off here. And it looks like I just need to just put a little lever behind the case to separate that out. And it looks like my little lever here with that screw is going to hold the case on as well. So let's just back that off a little bit. See if that's what the holding piece is. It looks that way, so let's just take that whole assembly off then. And again, I haven't played with this one in a while, so every now and then you just feel a little tension, and don't pry whatever you do. Okay, so here we go. A pretty clean assembly underneath here. That assembly back in here. Typical of most of these types of bait casters, you have a free spool release, a series of springs which are going to enable you to push down, and a click mechanism which is going to release upon cranking a hand. So we're going to take the main gear assembly off. That has a ferrule that sits up top and a tension washer. Actually, it's got two tension washers, one's still on the main gear. That tension washer is for the tension onto how sensitive it would be for the star adjuster. Okay, typical of this, we have a click mechanism in the back, and then we have a tooth ratchet for the anti-reverse. This is your click mechanism. I'm sorry, this is your anti-reverse. This is your click release mechanism here. And about all I can say, it looks like it's a problem is the grease is dried. So we're going to take WD-40 and give that a good hose. I'm going to grab a Q-tip there. That Q-tip is going to enable me to clean off that residual dried grease, and then we're just going to go ahead and put fresh grease in there. Now you don't need to take off the free spool assembly unless you feel that there's something going on there. You just need to make sure that it's oiled well and clean. In this case, the reel is very clean, so we don't need to do that as a general service. If there was a broken part in there, we certainly would go ahead and do that, but I don't see any need to do that here. But what I do like to do, though, is give it a good bath of oil, because that's going to be the primary slip mechanism there for lube. Just kind of let that sit in there. Now we're going to lube that spool gear. We're going to do that by taking a fishing reel grease. In this case, I use a Penn Reels precision reel grease. Use a fishing grease. Doesn't matter what type of reel you're working on. Use a grease that's designed for fishing reels. I'm just going to put that onto the gear teeth on the spool gear. And I'm being careful not to disturb those springs. I don't want to go looking for them. On this shaft, we want to clean the shaft off of the old grease. Put new grease in its place. And then we can pull the main gear off of the assembly. Making sure that everything is clean here. We're going to reseat this. This is the click mechanism for the spool release, and you can see as we push down on the lever, that's going to seat this little release button here, and then it's going to trip it when you turn. See how it fires that? When that tooth comes back, it fires it back up. So I just noticed there's a little bit of dried grease there, so let's get that out as well while we're at it. And then this is your anti-reverse gear. Now that tooth, that's a tooth gear. We can actually pull that one off, because that's got a trip mechanism in it that it's a V that rides on the shaft. So let's pull that off. That doesn't belong there at this point. Might as well just take it all back. Reseat the spool gear there. Put the shaft in. Make sure that's seated properly. You have to watch that. That gear is on an oval setting. If you don't have it sitting on the oval setting properly, it will not work correctly. This is then this is a V level that puts pressure onto that disc. You can just pinch it to make sure that you keep it tight, and then that seats onto the disc. Actually, it's riding on the other disc, my error there. This is where the diagrams would help. Again, I haven't seen one of these in a while, but that's going to sit on this then. We can place this in and get this oriented to the drive. Okay, I use a pin for this. This is this little centering pin is very helpful. I use it on a variety of tasks on my fishing reels. So you just want to turn it and make sure that it's operating properly, which it is. And then when we put this click plate on, that's going to give us the teeth for the anti-reverse dog to ride into. So we can see how it's working there. Now we can open this up and make sure that the drag is okay. It is. This is a typical one drag system. We'll make sure it's clean. So I'm just cleaning up the debris. And we're just going to put a light coat of oil on that. Actually, I'm going to use some dry grease here. We want to make sure that this main gear gets seated onto the device that drives the level wind as well as the spool gear. I'm just going to grab a little bit of Cal's Universal Dry Grease and put that in there to keep that drag washer loose and lubricated. I'm just going to run that around the inside of the metal plate, which will be fine. Seat that, and we'll give it a turn to make sure everything's operating properly. So is the spool gear turning? Is the device to turn the level wind working correctly and all? So with that then, we can put the collar on. Getting ahead of myself. The two tension washers go underneath. Most of the time those tension washers go above. In this case they go below. You'll notice that these are circular or curved. They're not flat. That's because there's multiple ways to do it. You can do it face to face and give yourself a gap. You can do it spooning, where they align correctly, and you can do it opposite or opposed. And all that does is that gives you a different tension on the drag adjuster. Sometimes you want a little bit more. You're going to put more of a gap there, give you a little bit more play in there to work the reel. Sometimes you want less, and you can do the spooning. Okay, we have that down then. We're going to align the case. And now we know we have the three screws, not the two. In this case, just need to align the two of the posts here. And I like that sound. When I hear a snap, I know I've done it properly. So I'm going to go grab the two springs that belong on here. I'm sorry, the screws for the spring posts, not the springs. And you want to hold these because you got the springs compressed underneath. Drive the one, grab the other. Then the third one we know belongs. We know that the third one belongs with the trip mechanism for free spool. did that. We took that cap off. We didn't need to. I'm going to leave that off for a minute just to put the arm on first. There we go. Again, it's a rectangular seating on these, so they just need to make sure it's properly seated. Alright, I'm going to put that piece back on. I left that cap off for a minute just to give me a little bit more clearance if I needed it. There we go. I'm good with that. Now I can put the cap back on. Give that a quick turn. Make sure that everything's turning properly. Push down and make sure that it backs off, which it does. Next up then would be the star adjuster nut. So we held this with the handle coming the one way, and if we find that we're having trouble getting it back on, we can always hold it with a little needle nose pliers below until you get the first or second of the turns on this. Just don't apply a lot of tension. You just want to hold it so it doesn't spin. And I don't have it square yet. Be careful as you do these. You don't want to strip this. You strip it, you're going to have to go buy a new gear sleeve. And when you're working with something like this that's an older reel, they may not even be available any longer. Okay, we pretty much have that now. Yep, we do. Okay, good. So then the tension washer comes on, and this is where the parts tray is a good thing because you keep looking and making notes there as you go to put your pieces and parts around that you got everything. The handle goes on, the little E-clip goes on. It's in my parts tray as well. Now we pulled this off, so you got to push this back on. I like to get the two pieces in each groove. Then that needle nose pliers just opposite the center of the clip and onto the stud, and you can just generally press it in. It's not a difficult or a heavy spring to load. That's set. Take the cap nut now. I've forgotten that this is a lefty reel, so it tightens opposite. And again, just like the other one, I'm holding the shaft with the handle now as I get it started. And I like to hand start everything because the risk of stripping the brass gears is tough, is something you don't want to do. Take the retention clip now. Make sure that we can get that centered over the hole, which we are. This is the only piece left in the bucket other than the spool, so we should be in pretty good shape now. Looks like we need another small turn here to get it tight and aligned. We got that. Set screw. So this is an older school reel, but it doesn't mean that it's not going to be able to catch a lot of fish to go. And so long as you keep them maintained, like we just did here, you'll be in a position to fish this reel for a long time to come. So we're just going to go set this up now from an alignment perspective. We just know that the only thing left now are these two, I call them thumb screws, because you can pretty much work the screws in by thumb, and then what you want to do is just give it a quarter turn there at the end to make sure that they stay tight. So that's it, folks. I wanted to do more bait casters. Truth of the matter is I don't get a lot of bait casters in here, but this one is one of the ones that came in, so I'm going to go do that. I like to put a nice healthy a bunch of lube on there as well underneath. And just check one more time, make sure we have the spool operation, which we do. And this one's ready to go fishing again. So that's it. That's the Quantum. It's Quantum QD1420L for the long carriage. And it's a nice reel, again, in the 1990s, 2000-ish range. And ready to go fishing again. So I hope you've enjoyed this. If you have one, I hope you use this video to go tune it up. And if you'd like to see more of these, please subscribe. This is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Thanks for viewing.